I'm going to be talking about how to distinguish between a Kundalini awakening and a Kundalini activation. I feel like this topic is a long time coming, especially for my patrons who will be receiving this video before anyone else. But in general, I feel like this is something that really needs to be discussed because a lot of people believe that they have had a Kundalini awakening when they've actually had a Kundalini activation. And a lot of people will think that because they've had a Kundalini activation, that it's the same thing as a Kundalini awakening. And if you have to ask whether or not you've had one, chances are you have not had one. So I want to say that right out the bat because it is one of those experiences where can be no doubt. It is overwhelming, life-transforming, shatters every illusion you previously had up until that point experience. So if you are having some energetic symptoms and feeling the Kundalini going up, and stopping at certain points, that's an activation. That's not an awakening. An awakening occurs when it reaches all the way up past the crown and activates the soul star chakra. Okay? And by the way, and this is something else that's not really talked about, once you have a Kundalini awakening, it keeps going. There are multiple nadis and major and minor chakra points that are not even referenced. A lot of people talk about the major 7. But an awakening does not just stop at the crown. It keeps going. And that's something else I want to talk about. I also want to talk about how you can have a Kundalini awakening in reverse from the crown going down to your root. And this type of Kundalini awakening is extremely traumatic in most cases. It usually happens when you do some sort of plant teacher. I'm not saying that you shouldn't use plant teachers. Absolutely, plant teachers can be extremely effective, but I definitely recommend doing it in a controlled environment with somebody that is certified to handle it and to walk you through the process, but I digress. These types of Kundalini activations can lead to mental illness if they're not regulated properly. I mean to maybe start at the beginning here, because I feel like I'm going all over the place. For people that are familiar with the Kundalini, this might be okay, but I'm going to go back to the basics of what the Kundalini is. The Kundalini is the primordial chi, the life force curled at the base of the spine, the fire, the combination of Shiva and Shakti, okay? This is the serpent of wisdom coiled at the base of your spine that when awakened, rises up, comes out, goes up through your spinal column, and becomes the 1,000-petaled lotus in Samdi, okay? And it is a very intense experience. The serpent becomes a dragon. So dragon is that awakened God state. And the Kundalini also very similarly represents DNA. And DNA and the Kundalini are really mere representations of each other at different dimensional levels. But I digress. That's for another video. When you have an activation, it means that it can lead to an awakening because it's essentially the serpent stirring and it can slowly start to rise. But that's not a full-on awakening. The full-on awakening is when the serpent reaches out of the top of the crown into the soul star, which is actually where we hold a lot of our akashic records, our oversoul expression, and much more. So let me give you guys an example of my Kundalini awakening. I actually talked about this on my other channel, the Zama the Hebrew Mystic Healer. So for those of you who have already heard this story, if you want to fast forward through, then you absolutely can. But I want to go ahead and share this real quick. My Kundalini awakening was a combination of using plant teachers and also the work I had done up until that point. Being certified as a Reiki Master, doing Kundalini yoga for a very long time, being very strict with my diet, demonstrating a lot of different types of energy work and psychic readings, And it all built up to this pivotal moment. I did take 2CB, which, by the way, I don't really recommend doing what I did, but I just felt compelled to. So I went with that intuition. And when I did it, I also drank water with moldavite inside. Also, don't recommend that. Anything that's a mineral with an ite at the end is usually toxic. But it was for such a short period of time, I don't think it mattered. But all of these things I was being led to do in the moment. And so I took the 2CB, I drank the moldavite water, and then all of a sudden I was feeling all of these emotions rising up. I was laughing, I was crying, I was being told to lie down, and I saw these blue hands moving, and then I saw these green snakes. I was taking deep breaths and was putting my body into kriyas and yoga positions that I hadn't even known before. I mean, this is definitely coming from deep within my DNA and my higher self directing this process, because I did not even know what those poses were. They were high level stuff. I couldn't even tell you. I couldn't remember what I did now. So I did that, and after I did that, this white energy just shot up my spine and out the top of my head, and I literally saw the 1,000-petal lotus as all of this rainbow color shooting out. I then saw the Om symbol appear in this violet color, and it just reverberated through the whole room. And I actually heard the Om sound for about 2 to 3 weeks after my Kundalini awakening. It's the sound of the universe. After this happened, I then saw this dragon made of pure fire, which I knew was an embodiment of myself, but also felt separate from myself at the same time. And this energy was very masculine, very aggressive in the energy, but not, a little intimidating, but I didn't feel like it was anything malevolent. Like I just knew everything was good. And I was talking to this being, and it was talking to me through my heart chakra and my mind. Like just the words were, reverberating through. And, this being, this felt masculine, this being, which was an aspect of myself, was, telling me that I was going to be entering the 5th dimension, that I was entering crystalline consciousness. I didn't even know about these terms. Okay. This was like, I didn't know anything about this shit before I had this Kundalini awakening. Honestly, I had just started working with dragons. I was actually doing automatic writing where I drew the symbol of the DNA and the Kundalini. I think it was like a month or two before this happened. And I was told that's what's coming. I didn't understand fully at the time. But then this happened. So anyway, I digress. I said something else that you should never say, okay? But I felt compelled to say it, and I was like, just make me a vessel. Like I wanted myself at that level to be directing me at this level. He made this like ball of fire. He just like put it inside my belly. Fire in the belly is actually a common concept, guys. And it fuels your willpower and your directive and everything else. It's really cool. Anyway, then he wanted me to come with him. It was moving his finger, like come with me. And at first I was starting to lift off on this geometric shape, but then I panicked and didn't go. So I opened my eyes and I stood up, and when I did that, I literally saw that dragon form coming through the wall like, the fabric of space-time was bending, I don't know how many of you guys have seen the movie Spawn from the 90s, where that demon comes through the wall. It looked like that. It was like bending through the wall. And as it was bending through the wall, as he was bending through the wall, my body was sinking down, and I was like, whoa. And I basically, at that point in time, I just saw like the fire shooting out of the candles that were lit in the background, And I was like, I can't do this anymore. So I started to disconnect myself from the experience. But then once it was over, I continued on my awakening path. I remember defragmenting and then rebuilding myself up, hearing the sound for several weeks straight. I totally started changing. I was making electronics go crazy, burning up, all electronics around me, making car alarms go off. I was seeing like red fiery wings come out of my back a lot. Didn't want to speak or say too much, but then when I did speak, it was like my voice was extremely clear, and it was a very intense transformative experience. I started going into working with Kali energy, and then I ended up going down a different path after that. But that awakened a whole nother level of my spiritual gifts as well. And my whole perception of everything changed. I understood at that point in time that everything was true and nothing was true. Everything was one. Everything was part of, the collective consciousness. And it was a very powerful experience. Now, did I just stay in that heightened state? No. I have to work at maintaining that state, because I'm still in the flesh down here. But that awakening process has continued. I've gone through levels and loops and spirals and journeys, and it goes on and on. The activation goes on and on. So that is an example of a Kundalini awakening, guys. And I know that I did take plant teacher, so it was a little amplified as far as the experience being felt, but that is an example of a Kundalini awakening. It is life-changing, it is life-shattering. It is not something that you have to question. You'll know if you had it. You'll feel that going up your spine and out the top of your head. You will completely activate to a whole nother altered state of awareness. It will be mind-blowing. Activation, you can have symptoms of activation because you'll feel energy going up your spine. When it stops at each chakra, you might feel pressure in that region. You might feel, pain or emotions come up associated with that chakra point, memories. You might feel like a blockage is released, and then all of a sudden the energy goes up to the next chakra point. And that's basically how it works when it's a slow climb. You'll feel as the energy works its way up, it's clearing out, things that you're holding on to at that level. It's clearing out blockages. It's, changing your perspective of things slowly. So it's different. It's subtle, and it starts a slow climb. So when you have an activation, then it can lead to awakening. It usually will, especially if I recommend doing yoga, meditation, Tai Chi or Qigong, listening to your intuition, your body, making sure that you're not existing just out of your head or just out of your body, but that you're, existing out of that point of intuition. If you've had a Kundalini awakening, though, guys, if you've had it, it can be really intense. You may have to take really good care of your body and your mind. For me, I craved a lot of salt. I actually gained weight and then lost it afterward. You might crave salt. You might crave water. You might feel sometimes like you don't know who you are, or like you're kind of deconstructing your whole personality or your programs. You can get dizzy when you try to do any kind of exercise or movement. What I would suggest is not doing yoga. If you just had a Kundalini awakening, I would recommend doing, gentle like meditation and gentle kriyas, but not anything like too strenuous. You really got to make sure you're grounding. Grounding is super important so that you can help process, so your body can process that. You want to make sure you're getting as much rest as you can, and you want to just really listen closely to your intuition during this time. And your Kundalini awakening might lead you in a direction that may be really weird or uncomfortable for you, but it's for a reason. It's a very expansive very shattering experience. And it's not something that is a one size fits all. Each person is going to have a different experience with it, but you'll know. So like I said, if you have to doubt it, if there's any question in your mind about whether or not you've had one, you haven't. You've probably activated a little bit. The actual awakening, where there is no doubt to having an awakening, you'll know. I hope that this has helped clear up the difference between activation and awakening. I will be probably putting out more videos in the future on this topic for sure, especially on Patreon. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Take care. Check out my website, thetantricdragoness.com, to book a private akashic reading or any other reading. Also, akashic portraits, consultations, shamanic journeys, starseed charts, primordial dragon fire healing, and much more. You can also subscribe to Patreon to learn how to do a lot of this yourself. There are various templates I've designed. Activate Diamond Consciousness, Activate the Black Flame, Journey the Underworld, Tantric Healing and BDSM, Astral Projection and Power, Shields, Cloaks, Wards, Learning Light Language, Exclusive and Premier Readings, Soul Fragment Retrieval, Advanced Ancestral Work, Creating Your Own Shamanic Sanctuary, and much more. Thanks for your support, and stay tuned for future videos.